Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. Today, we are thrilled to welcome the star of the film that is regularly placed on lists of the funniest movies of all time, Airplane. Please help us welcome Robert Hayes. Robert, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm waiting. Yeah. I thought I heard the crowd somewhere. There it was.
There is. So, to start with, you were born in Maryland, and your father was a career military person. So where did the love of performing come from?
Born in Maryland, I would have no clue what it looks like, except that you can see pictures of it. But I was probably 8 months when we left because he was stationed there in Washington, D.C. So we're a Southern California family, but 15 times across country by car.
Oh,
Did you ever see The Great Santini?
Yes.
Oh,
That was us getting up at 4 a.m, loading up the station wagon and heading out across country to go to the next duty station. So
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. Where did I get? Let me see. I just adjust that a little bit. Is it better, or do you like it more? Is it better up here like this?
Yeah.
This is usually my best side.
No, it makes you look short. That's the only problem.
So
Yeah.
this is our little Hawaiian bungalow here.
We were asking about that.
I don't know. I really don't know where. I do know that I was not one of those guys that loved school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just couldn't wait to get to the next class and couldn't wait to crack the books and learn. I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful if I could have had that kind of, but I was the one that, especially I was sitting over near a window, I just look out the window and look at the clouds and see the forms and the shapes, see them moving and seeing which ones are moving which way. Just fascinated, you know. You'd have all the stuff up on the chalkboard and just kind of trying to keep awake. But the funny thing was that as soon as they put on a film, like a little educational film, they get out this 16mm projector and they'd set it up. And as soon as they turned that thing on, it was just boom. I didn't know what they were talking about, but it was, look at all that and look at that and look at that guy. Look at the way he's moving around and look at the background. Look what that's doing. Look at the light, the way it's hitting him. Look at all the, you know.
Yeah.
And then I would be, you know, God, you know, his performance he could be better. He could, if he was just to say it this way instead. So I was an automatic director. Or critic, I guess. I mean, oh my God, I just realized I was a critic. So I love Mel Brooks, you know. He says, what do you think of critics? He says, crickets? I hate those things. They're loud, they make all the noise with rubbing their legs together. But my mom's uncle, my great uncle, Uncle Hal, worked at Universal Studios for he was in the publicity department.
Oh, cool.
And he he worked there for 30 years, I think. And when we got back from Turkey, one of our places that we were stationed 3 years over in Turkey, and when we got back, Dad had to turn around and go to Japan, and the Marines rarely get to take their families with them. So we were really lucky we got to go to Turkey, but we didn't get to go to Japan with him. And good or bad, I don't know, but we didn't get to go. And I remember we went up from where we were living. Our home was Newport Beach, Laguna, Corona, that area. And we came up to LA to visit Uncle Hal and Aunt Marion and Uncle Hal set up we went to see him at work, and then they set up the Universal Studios tour. Now, this was 1960. And so the Universal Studios tour consisted of, it was for VIPs, and they would put you in a limo. And it was just a big, one of those extended black Cadillacs, limos. And they drive you around the lot, and you would look at stuff, and you stop and walk in on the sound stage. I remember watching Boris Karloff rehearsing an opening segment of Thriller. And he was leaning against the mantle of the fireplace and going through it. And then once they were going to film it, we had to get out. But that was so cool seeing that. And then we go into the stage and see another one, and go by the old wharf with the water in the tank, with the old Western, like it could be San Francisco, in the 1800s, or some Western town that was on a river, or, and that was just, to me, I was like, oh, I just want to get and play in it, and of course I had my Davy Crockett hat and everything back in the 50s, like all my friends did, everyone. And but he got all of these autographed pictures for me, and sent me a bunch of them that he'd gotten the people at the studios to write to Bobby, best wishes or whatever they wrote. And people, they either were doing a project there or were under contract there or whatever. And I had Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh and Cary Grant, one of my all-time favorites. And Tony Curtis also was just, I loved him. But and I mean, and several others. And years later, when they were saying, who influenced you, I said, well, the ones that I always looked at, my big four for me, not because I didn't love other ones too. I mean, Spencer Tracy, how can you not love him? And Cagney, and I mean, all of these people. William Powell, oh my God, one of my favorites of all time. But the big four, because I figured that I was kind of more physically like them, and I could do the kind of roles they were doing, was Jimmy Stewart, Henry Fonda, Cary Grant, and Gary Cooper. And those were the four that I just kind of would watch really closely and think, ooh, how could I do that? What are they doing? Can I match that? Can I learn from that? Because actors are sponges. We watch, this, we watch, we soak it in, we try to mimic them, and then later on we just try to make it our own. And then that's us. That's what we do with that role, or with whatever, other roles we're going to do. So that was and then another out of those pictures, years later, I was doing the series Starman, and a woman loved the show so much, and she called and asked if she could be a guest on the show. And so we said, of course, to Janet Leigh, of course we'd like to have you on the show. And I told her the story about that, and she was like, and she asked if everyone was asking her if she had pictures, could they get a picture? And so she was autographing pictures to everyone, and I said, yeah, I want one. I have one, but I want one. And then she asked for one of me, and I thought that was so sweet.
That is awesome.
And she was one of the neatest ladies ever. But anyway, you can tell why they cast me as Ted Stryker, because I ramble so much here. But,
Not at all.
No, that is okay. I mean, that's fantastic. So, basically you get started, and your very first credit on IMDb is a guest spot on the Rockford Files. So what was it like for you to be going from, appearing in regional roles and now guest starring on a TV show with James Garner?
Well, Garner was just a god to me. I mean, I loved him. I thought I loved Rockford Files and everything that he did. And then I got to be on the show as one of my early things that I did when I got up to LA. And my scene was with him. And when we finished the scene, we were going to cut and go to lunch. And he turned to the director and he said, "Did you get his close up? Did they get your close up? Hey, did you get his close up? Did you get, you know?" And the director, of course, I don't think they did, but it was close enough, you know, or two shot or medium close shot, whatever. And I was like, "Oh, hey, they don't, yeah, they got whatever they needed to get. They got it." And the director was looking at me like, Did you ask for a close up?" And we didn't, you know, and it's like, no, everything's really great. And I said, "Yeah." And the director said, yeah, we got it. And he said, "Okay, good. I just want to make sure you got your close up." And I thought, God, he's the nicest
Awesome.
guy.
Wow.
One of the nicest guys I ever met. He was just incredible.
Hmm.
And you love that when you think someone is so wonderful and then you get to work with them and they're terrific, you know.
Well, you did a few guest starring roles through the years, and then you got cast as one of the leads in the sitcom Angie with Donna Pescow. It was created by Gary Marshall. I remember enjoying that show. You know, it was a fun sitcom. How did that role come about for you? And was there any added pressure because now all of a sudden, like, you're leading a show instead of guest starring?
Yeah. Well, and by the way, it was in San Diego. I remember I got my I joined AFTRA because you could just join it. You couldn't just join SAG, but you could just join AFTRA. So I did, and paid whatever, $225 or something to join it at the time. And my first role was a training film for the Air Force of how to inflate an aircraft tire properly. And and if you don't, it explodes. And then they had us laying on the ground with ketchup on us, like we're all injured and bleeding. And that was my first. But my second one, which was my first real thing, was when they shot Harry O down there. You remember Harry O?
Yeah.
With David Jansen?
Yep.
And it took place in San Diego, and they shot it in San Diego. They later moved it up to LA. But I had a little bit on that, and it was Eddie Foy the third, that cast me in that.
Huh.
And that's how he got me really going when I came up to LA. He sent me over to a guy to see whether or not we got along as an agent, and that was my agent. And he was wonderful. But by the time I got Angie, my agent told me I'd been up there for about, I think, a year and a half, something like that. And he told me he was sitting with two agent buddies of his at lunch at the Polo Lounge or something. And one of them was saying, "Yeah, I got a kid that's really, I think he's going to really do well. They got him two bits on a, you know, this and the Canon and show, and you know, he's got a couple of those, and I think he's going to be pretty good." One of the other guys said, "Yeah, my guy's doing really well. I got 5 shows for him." And you know, he was listing the Canon, and they said, "How about you, Arn?" And it would been about a year and a half, and he said, "Yeah, I got a kid that he's doing pretty well. We've already done over 24 shows in a year and a half." What? What? and it was, I guess I was just ordinary enough, and you know, whatever, that I fit into a lot of little bit parts. But I worked up 1, 2 lines, 4 lines, 5, up to doing guest shots. And then I was doing a show in then I went in and I met on Angie, and Mark Harmon was there, and oh man, there were a couple of other guys, and I'm blanking right now, unfortunately. I'm sorry, fellas. And then I got a TV movie, and we were shooting it in Park City, Utah, and they called and said they wanted me to fly back, and I said, well, I can't. I'm right in the middle of filming this thing. To my agent, what am I going to do? He said, no, we'll get them to shoot it. So they got the crew, and the crew was really happy to do it. We all got along well. So they set it up, and the photographer shot this thing of me. And here I am in an old Western garb, and it's for Angie. And I'm doing a screen test for Angie out in the trees, the forest, and the river running by, and, typical location for Angie. And so I did that, and I just said, okay, that was a lot of fun. Thanks, guys. And that was fun. We get back to work, and I forgot about it. And then they called me back in. It came down to Mark. There were 3 of us, I think, that it came down to. And then they actually shot the pilot with a different guy who happened to be my neighbor in the same little. He was renting the house, and I was renting the little room over the garage from the guy that owned that up in Laurel Canyon. And things weren't right. They were reshuffling the cast, and they were making a change with him. And he was one of the sweetest guys, really wonderful guy. And he said he was coming up his stairs, and I was walking out to go run some errands or something. And or no, it was a weekend. He was getting ready to go on a ski trip that weekend, and he said, "Yeah, I hear that they're looking at you for the role." And I said, "Yeah, but they don't want me. They're never gonna, just have a great time, man, on your trip." But don't worry about that, because look at the guys they got. Mark Harmon is a handsome star quarterback, All-American, and so by the end of the weekend, they wanted me, and he comes back, and I see him walking back from the ski trip up his steps to the house, and I said, "Hey, yeah, John, I didn't know how to say it." And I just saw him, and his eyes just went down. I saw his whole thing just singing. I went, God, I hate this business. And, he went off, and then I went in there, and we started doing it. We had so much fun. And Donna, it's funny, Donna and I are the same size relationship as my mom and my dad. And so we used to want to do my folks' story with us playing that. It was our little joke. But she's remained a close friend and a godmother to my son. But we had the greatest time. And that first season was especially wonderful because of all the people that we had that came from Cheers and big shows like that were our writers that were so exceptional. And so that worked out pretty well. It came out, we were number 5, the 5th rated show that season. And that was a half, mid-season replacement, but it was really rated high that season. And of course it worked so well, they changed everything. So
yeah, we were actually going to ask about that, but first we just wanted to find out what was it like to work for Gary Marshall.
Gary was great. He was wonderful. I mean, he was on, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, had all those shows going, Mork and Minnie and everything. But he would come by the set and do his, Gary Marshall stuff, and that lanky guy. He was so funny. He was just, he was wonderful. He was really great. So creative. He was sort of like the sitcom Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. That's a really good comparison. Yeah. That's a great comparison.
Every show on the air seemed to be his for a while,
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Pescow. I mean, you also had Deborah Lee Scott and Doris Roberts, great actresses.
Yeah. Sharon Spellman played my sister. Yes. She was wonderful.
What are some of your memories of them?
I just, when I auditioned for Airplane, and I got the role, and we started filming in the hiatus, the break between that first half season that we did and when we came back for the second season. And it was 7 weeks, the shooting schedule, but it overlapped with Angie by 2 weeks. And they were all so, excited and jealous, and that I was doing a feature film. And up to that point, I had never been that exhausted in my life, because we were filming, we came back, I'd go in at 9 in the morning, and unfortunately, that part of Airplane we were shooting on the Paramount lot. We were doing the bar scenes with the dance sequence in it, and the all of the bar stuff. And I think maybe there were some other things that we shot, some of the up in the control tower, maybe. But anyway, we were there at Paramount because we were either on location or we were at the Culver City studios or Raleigh, or all around town. And I remember I would get in at the call was 9 o'clock on Angie, and we'd sit down with everybody up in the offices, all of the producers, exec producers, writers, which were producers. So we had like, I don't know, 20 people in there, and all the cast. And so probably, 25 people or so. And we would just sit around the table and we would read the script, and they can all hear it. Then they give you a break. You break for like 45 minutes, and then you go back downstairs, and people go back to the dressing rooms, or they go hang around the craft service table and just eat, which is what actors do all the time whenever they're not doing anything else. And then they'd come back and we would start blocking it, and then break for lunch, and then come back after lunch, keep working until 5 or 6 or so. And that was the way we started the episode. And then each day it was a little bit longer and longer, and all the rewrites would come in, and all the colors, the pages would start stacking up in our scripts. But what I would have to do, because of the Airplane being filmed at the same time, go in 9 o'clock, we would read through, go back downstairs, get ready, and then we start blocking. As soon as they said lunch, literally, because I'm just waiting like a horse in the gates, I'd start running for the front door of the soundstage. And as I was running, it had it all set up with the prop guy was a good buddy, and he'd made a sandwich and put it in a Ziploc, and he'd throw it to me, and I'd catch it like a wide receiver and run out the door and eat it as we're driving in the car across to the other side of the studio where they had the stage set up with the dance. Then I'd go in and be eating while they're trying to get makeup on me, and I'm getting in the wardrobe, and I'd get out there and we'd start filming. So my lunch consisted of a couple of minutes to get over to the other stage. Wow. That was it. And then they would call back and say, okay, on Angie, they'd say, okay, we're ready. And I'd say, yeah, okay. And I'd say, yeah, you gotta go. We said, yeah, no, maybe we can get a little more in. And so then they'd call again. Hey, Bob, we're ready. And I said, yeah, I'll be right over. Just finishing this one thing. And then we'd shoot more and more. And pretty soon they're screaming, get over here.
Oh my gosh.
And I'd say, okay. I said, this time I gotta go, guys. And I'd leave. And then we'd film, and then I'd come back, and sometimes we would get more filming done afterwards.
Oh my.
And so then I'd go home and I'd just be exhausted and get up the next day. And halfway through, a week into that, I was so tired. It's like you're delirious, with their little X's where your eyes used to be,
Yeah.
And I said to Sharon Spellman, who played my sister on Angie, and I said, this is rough. This is wiping me out. I'm so tired. I can't even see straight. She says, oh, don't say anything to me. You're getting to do a feature.
Yeah.
And I just said, okay, I won't get any sympathy here. And I'd wander off.
Yeah. No, not a chance. Not a chance. I can totally see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, okay, going back to the first season, as you alluded to, or were talking about, the show was so successful that they decided to change everything, which always makes sense. Like, the structure of the show, changing the cast, switching nights, and then the show was canceled. I mean, do you remember your feelings about that at the time, or was there talk amongst the cast as to why these changes were even made?
I think it was too, I don't know. I think that was early on in the political correctness, really. I think it was needing to have, well, you got to have a woman as the executive producer. You can't just have the men be executive producers. So you bring in a woman, and then you bring her whole, entourage of people. And so it was all having to do with, all the politically correct kinds of categories you have to fill. And I think a lot of that was part of that. Was pretty early on with all of that. They wanted to be ahead of the curve, I guess. But there was that, and there was, I heard through people there at the network, somebody was a friend of his, actually, that worked at the ABC also. There was a guy there that he just had something, a burr under his saddle. I don't know how else to put it, against some of the people, one person in particular in the cast. And and it didn't make sense why they would want to, it was all a personal vengeance thing. I don't know what it was, but they do that. That stuff happens in business, and it happens in Hollywood. So for me, it was lucky for me that Airplane wound up being the explosion that it was. And instead of going in and, I mean, it broke the box office of almost every theater it played in across the country. And because of that, instead of going in and sitting in there with the herd of everybody and doing the cattle call of reading and seeing if you can get a role, I was having scripts sent to me. And I thought, well, I've seen this in the movies, but this is cool. So I'd have 10 or 12 scripts, or 20 sometimes, and read through them. And the bad part was having to read through all that stuff, but the fun part was that I got to.
Wow.
And because I'm one of those actors that you get a script, it's like, oh yeah, now you got to learn, you got to memorize everything else. And so you read through it and you say, okay, yeah, I see where it's all going. And then you just want to be up on stage and you want to do it. And that's what it was like in the theater. And we got a 4-week rehearsal period. Oh, can't we just get up and do it? Don't you want to learn your lines first, Bob? Huh? Oh, yeah, I suppose. Okay, all right.
Well,
But
we are going to, of course, before we get to Airplane, I have to ask about something else. You appeared on 2 episodes of a show that I was obsessed with as a kid. It was religious viewing in my house, Battle of the Network Stars. So you were on the winning team in one of them. So we've had other guests who appeared on that, and they all said this pretty much the same thing, that everyone came just looking for a good time, and then once the competition started, the mood changed. Everyone started.
Sure.
Is that how you found it?
Competitive. Actors are very competitive. Yeah. Yeah. No, we were kind of like the ABC. Yeah, they don't have a chance. So okay. And this was Howard Cosell, and he was so delightful. He was so great. And then Hank Stram was the the professional advisor coach on one of them. I think the one where we won. But as we kept going through, and it got down to CBS and us, NBC, they got kicked out. They were already, you knew they were third place, so it came down to who's going to be first and who's going to be second. And Conrad wasn't on the team that year, but he was there as their advisor coach. Basically, he was the guy that stood with the whip that had broken glass in it to whip his team to, and he seemed like a mean guy. But it got down to the final thing, and it was going to determine the whole thing, and it was the rope pull. So rope pull. Yeah, tug of war. And my buddy Kent McCord he and I were on the ABC team. And we said, okay, I said, where? You want front of the back? He said he wanted he said, I want the back. And I said, good, I want the front. And so we got to the front. I got the front. He got in the back and just got that rope. And big guy, football all through high school. You know, he was a kid, and then high school and college, and big guy, bouncer. I mean, a tough guy. And skinny me up in the front. And then all the people in between. And I remember the camera going by as they're going by each face. And are you ready for this? And you'd have them going, you know, that kind of stuff. And it got to me, and I just was staring at that rope, and I was staring at those people. I was getting myself so psyched up, and it got to me and said, you ready for this? And I wasn't paying any attention. And I knew they weren't going. And I finally went, yeah, like that. And they went, you know, I guess we're not getting anything out of him. And they moved to the next person. And I grabbed it. I told him, I said, we've got to hold it. He and I both agreed. We talked, you know, really good friends, and we knew what we were thinking just about. You grab it, you hold, you wait until you feel them readjusting, you pull. And then you just slowly creep up the you know, the rope, and then you hold it again and you wait. When you feel them adjust, you pull some more, and then you slowly creep up the rope. And I had it underneath my arm, and the thing was a big sisal rope, rough. Yeah. And I had my hands on that thing, and I mean, we just leaned into it and finally pulled him in. And Conrad was bending over and screaming at his team, yeah, we played. I mean, it was just like, and then I noticed like a minute or two before it finally all happened, I realized it's a little quieter over there. I looked around, and he wasn't anywhere to be seen. He could see that he was going to lose his team, and he didn't want to be around. So I said, well, it wasn't my fault. You know, he wanted to have nothing to do with those losers over there. And so we finally, we pulled them in. And once you get the one or two in, then you can pull all of them in. That was easy. But when it was over with, I thought, that feels a little wrong. I looked down, and my arm here and my side right here were kind of a little bit bloody, because I was holding that rope so tight, and so I could climb up the rest of it. And that was neat.
That's awesome.
that always looked like a fun show to me. I was bummed because I actually did I was on an NBC series briefly in the mid 70s, and I was praying I would get invited, you know, as one of the young people to come do the show, but I think I was just too young. But God, that really looked like a blast. My gosh.
God, it was fun. It was so fun.
Well, going now, getting back to Airplane, you know, here you are sharing with us that you were shooting at the same time you're shooting Angie. So how did that come your way if you were already working on a TV series?
You mean Airplane?
Airplane, yeah.
My agent, Arnie Soloway, was my agent, and he was one that Eddie Foy had introduced me to. And most of my career, he was my agent. And he had a new agent that he had just brought in, a woman named Beth Voicu. And Beth had worked with Howard Koch in some capacity on film or something, knew Howard a bit. And they had been, the boys and Howard, you know, all of them had been all over LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Minneapolis, Chicago, Dallas, New York, Atlanta. They'd been all over the country, and they got everything cast pretty much, but they could not find Elaine, and they couldn't find Ted. Who was it? Not Susan Sarandon. It was one in Alien.
Sigourney Weaver, I read, yeah.
Sigourney Weaver, yeah.
Mm.
She came in dressed in a 40s stewardess outfit. They tell me, I wasn't there, but she came in with that, but apparently she said, "Now, I don't want to say this. I don't want to say this. I think we should change this line. We should do." It's like, I think right there pretty much was bing, little red flag goes up. They had been working on that script for at least 5 years, and they kept getting rejected. And they'd go back and rewrite and polish. It was probably the tightest script I've ever read of all the scripts that I've read. And it was perfect. If you want to mess around with that, then, how do you want to take a success and turn it into, snatch defeat from the jaws of success? That's how to do it, is let people start hacking around with it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that didn't work out. They had a screen test of David Letterman that they did on the David Letterman show when they were a guest on there, and they loved him, and he's very funny. I think he's very funny too, but he never wanted to be an actor, and his agents were pushing him to do it, and they finally said, yeah, okay. And they loved him, but they realized he can't do it again. Okay, take 2. Let's do it again, because he's done it. He's performed for the crew and for everyone, and he didn't have that actor's sensibility of, okay, let's do it again and keep it fresh. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, for
And
sure.
so he didn't want to do it. They really wanted him to, but they understood that, so that was how he, they had Barry Manilow apparently tested.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that true? That Barry Manilow, they wanted him?
Yeah. Somebody wanted him to be in there. And Bruce Jenner, when Bruce was Bruce, and that, didn't make that one. But so anyway, they had so much trouble. They were really getting like, oh God, what are we going to do? And Beth, the new agent, Beth called in to Howard Koch, said, "Howard, I got your guy." And he said, "Well, bring him by." Sent in pictures, and you've got pictures, but you can't really tell much of anything just by a still picture. So I came in, I met Howard and the boys, and we all got along really well. And then I read for them, and they liked the reading. And when Julie walked in, I think basically it was that Ted Stryker that they were having trouble with, because when Julie got off, she rode up in the elevator with them apparently in New York, and when she got off the elevator, I think they thought, "Oh my God, that's our Elaine," I think. And then of course she read, and it's like, "Oh, I think we've got Elaine. I think we have her." So it was basically Ted is what they were having trouble with. And so then they said, let's see how they look together. And fortunately for me, I got to, test with her. She's just incredible. Mm-hmm. So they liked that test, and that was it.
Did you know what they were going for in the script right away? I mean, did you? I mean, Kentucky Fried
I read. I read the script on an airplane. And
of course,
Donna Pescow and I were going to Minneapolis, St. Paul with a whole contingent of ABC people, Howard Cosell and a bunch of other. They wanted to bring all of the stars of their shows out that they could get, and fly out for a big junket to KSTP TV was an NBC station. It was the oldest station west of the Mississippi, I guess. And they were changing after all these decades, they were changing to ABC. And they wanted to go and have a big brouhaha with them. So on the way out there, it's either way out or the way back, I was reading the script, and I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating when I say that there was something on every single page. There was something that made me laugh out loud, even if it was just a little, even that much. But there was something that made me laugh out loud. And the stewardess came by and she said, a real kind of prim, proper, had a bun all pulled back, her hair pulled back in a bun. And she bent over, she said, I couldn't help but notice that you seem to be enjoying what you're reading. And I said, oh yeah, this is a script. I'm going to go in on Tuesday. And this was like Sunday. I'm going to go in on Tuesday and I'm going to audition for this. Oh, well, how nice. And I said, do you want to read this when I'm done? That would be very nice. I said, okay. So I finished it. And then I said, hey, do you want to read this? So she goes up, sits down against the bulkhead that goes into the cockpit, the little stewardess seat. And she pulls that down. She sits down, her knees together. She's very prim, and she looks at it, starts to turn the page. And I'm looking up at her, and she's turning the page, and she's reading. And I looked up a little later, and I saw her starting to smile. And I looked back down, I was doing stuff, and I looked up a little later, and I see her starting to giggle. And her blouse is just getting a little ruffled. And I looked up later and her hair came undone and then she was laughing. I mean, she was just out of control laughing. And then afterwards, she comes back and you can see she's trying to put things back in place and hands it back to me as though nothing ever happened. That was very funny. Yes, thank you very much. So I thought, okay, there's something funny in this. It's my kind of humor, and I loved what they did. And I mean, I'm that twisted, I guess. I just like that. I liked it.
Well,
Yeah.
the film was based on, the 57 film, Zero Hour. I watched the side by side. It's just incredible how, the tone. I mean, had you seen the movie prior to that? Prior to filming Airplane?
I don't remember if I had ever seen it because I love old movies, especially black and white. I love them. But I don't remember if I'd seen that or not. But they got the story that they'd set up when they were doing Kentucky Fried Theater, just on Pico, just down the street from 20th Century Fox. They rented that storefront and turned it into a little theater. And they would set their old clunky, big old VCR overnight to film the late night movies because they want to see all the commercials, because they would do spoofs of the commercials in the show. And it recorded the movie, and they started the VCR up and they started the tape and they were watching it and they go, oh, okay, let's skip ahead. Wait a minute. Look at that. Oh my God. Okay, let's skip ahead. Well, wait a second. Hold on. And pretty soon they watch the whole movie and they go, oh my God, how would you spoof something this funny? This is already so funny. But then that's when they started working on the thing. And when they finished and they were getting ready to shop it around, they said, we kind of used Zero Hour as a guide for this because they thought it was so well written. Everything about Zero Hour was the way it was structured and crafted. And they said to their agent, do you think we're going to need, have any trouble with this? And the agent said, I think we better find Zero Hour and get the rights because yes, it's very much very close to it. So yeah, unfortunately. And they got, I think instantly they got a half of the rights. Then they were searching all over town and they were getting bits and pieces of the rights and they couldn't find this last little chunk. They couldn't find it. It was like, oh God, what are we going to do? And then I don't know who told them, somebody in the archives or somebody in legal department or something said, Oh yeah, I found this piece of paper here at Paramount where they were doing it, right? Yeah, but it looks like we're the ones that have those rights. It's all this time, and that was right there at Paramount.
Wow.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Well, the writers and directors, David and Jerry Zucker and Jim Abraham, are now considered legendary, but back then, they were still pretty green. And this was
First,
there was it was their directorial debut. What were they
right.
like as directors?
They rank right up at the top of the best that I've ever worked with, best people.
Mm.
They grew up together. Their dads were occasionally in business together in Milwaukee. And Jim is the oldest, and then David, and then Jerry's the youngest. And they would do, they started Kentucky Fried Theater. The nucleus of it started at University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, at Madison. And so they were so, I've said it before, it's like three bodies with one head. They literally, one would start a sentence, another one would say the middle of it, and the other would say the end of the sentence. So they were so in tune with what they wanted. And David and Jim sat off in a little hut, or if we were on stage, or a little trailer if it was out on location, and they had the video feed, and they had it taped off so they would just see what was going to be up on the screen. They didn't have the cameraman's view of you can see what's coming in, and it didn't quite make it into the screen. It's got the border around it. They taped that off so that they only saw what was going to be on the film screen up, in the theater. And then Jerry was the one that was out, like the traditional director, out, on next to camera. And he'd say cut, and they would come out and they'd huddle. And if something that didn't get into frame, or this thing came in and we didn't want that in the frame, okay, let's go again, and they'd shoot it. Or they'd huddle, great, okay, print it, let's move on. And their sense of what's funny and what works is the best I've ever been around. I mean, and the way that they would get it out of you was just great. So they were they were wonderful. I mean, imagine that's your first feature film that you ever get to do, and you get to work on that kind of a script that's good with the people that are that great. It's unbelievable.
Well, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go.
No, I was going to say, speaking to that point, you get the part, you've been on TV, but now you're fronting a motion picture, with these legendary and accomplished actors like Lloyd Bridges and Peter Graves, Robert Stack, Leslie Nielsen, and you even have a scene with Ethel Merman. I mean, was that intimidating to you, or?
Sure. Bob Stack had done a series called Most Wanted. Mm-hmm. And it was a special unit, the LAPD, that went after the most wanted criminals. And I had a guest star spot on that. Mm-hmm. And I was the bad guy, which was not kind of a normal thing for me, but he was a good guy that got a little kind of twisted for whatever reason. And so he was kind of a bad guy. He was a twisted guy. But anyway, so I'd been there with Bob, and he was just so delightful. One of the most enjoyable people that I've met in the business, that I've ever met. I mean, he was wonderful. Lloyd was a lot of fun. Peter Graves was also. Leslie had his very famous by now farting machine, and I
was going to ask if it showed up on that set or not, because yes, I mean, probably everybody knows this, but it's rather incredible prank that he's been able to get away with for decades.
Did it show up on the set? He asks. It was probably the first time. No one had ever heard of it before.
Oh,
And
okay, okay.
so here he is, and he's and people are looking. God, two young girls that were extras. I was sitting in my chair. It was so neat. I had this chair with my name on it, and it was just so cool. And I'd sit in there so that I say, yeah, it's my chair. I got my name on it. Goofy guy. And it was down at, I think, Culver City Studios, and these two young, like early mid-20s gals, early 20s probably, and they came walking, and one of them said, "Oh, there's Leslie Nielsen. I want to go over and introduce myself." And so she went over, and the other girl was over here kind of standing around waiting. And minutes later, she came running back to, "You know what he did?" And I was thinking, oh my God, got her. Oop, there's another one. He got her. Oh, got him. Oops, he got another one. And it was one of the hardest scenes for me was in the cockpit when they say, "Can you fly this plane?" It was the first time that I say my line, "Surely you can't be serious." And he responds with his line, "I'm serious, so call me Shirley." It's a 3-shot with all of us, with Randy, and with him, Dr. Rumack, and with me. And Lorna Patterson played Randy. It's brilliant. And it was a 3-shot. Then they had the 2-shot of them and a close-up of me, and their close-up, 2-shot of them, close-up of me. And my long speech was, "Mr. Stryker, can you land this plane?" And that's where I say, "Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. Don't call me Shirley." And I say, "Well, I flew single engine fighters in the war, but this plane has 4 engines. It's an entirely different kind of flying altogether." And they say, "It's an entirely different kind of flying." And I kind of looked like, what was that? And during that whole scene, he said, "Mr. Stryker, can you land this?" And that's what. And the camera's on me, and I've got to just keep a straight face the whole time.
Oh no, my God.
So what happened? You were asking about, did it ever show up on the set? A friend of his, a doctor or dentist, had apparently invented this thing. And I
was hoping you would describe it, because for people who don't know, it's like the most genius little contraption. I think I've seen them before. That he was either. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. This is awesome.
It's about this big around. It's about 2.5 inches, 3 inches around, 2.5, I guess. And it's rubber, and it's hard at the ends, and it has a hole in one end about the size of a pencil. And when you squeeze, it's like a bellows, so the air comes out that hole. If you put it in your hand, and especially if you lick that part, this is the proper way, the proper usage of the farting machine. And you stick it right here, and when you squeeze it, you can either, if you're really good, and he was a maestro, you can either have it sound like a combination of Ernie Borgnine and Ethel Merman, or you could have it like Sandy Duncan, just a little. So you have all of the anywhere in between.
Yeah.
And he brought a box of these things, and he had little boxes inside, and he sold them to the cast and crew for his friend, the doctor. I think someone bought one. They said, I didn't buy one. I went home and made one. I wish I would have bought one, but I thought, no, I could make that. So I went home, I made a whole bunch of them, and pretty soon they'd say, "Quiet on the set. Okay, roll camera." And the operators would have them. You hear, roll sound, speed, roll camera, speed. And then they'd say action. And pretty soon Jerry was, "Get those things off this set." So everybody had to take him and put him away. And he said, I don't want to hear those things on the sun. And so he said, okay, Leslie. And he would go, yes. So he was the rebel always. He was the farting rebel, is what he was.
God, that's so awesome.
Oh.
I read that Robert Stack got the humor, but Peter Graves kept calling it tasteless. Do you remember those discussions with him at all?
Well, the one that called it tasteless was Peter. Is that what you said, Peter?
Graves, yes. Peter.
Yeah. Peter threw it on the floor, threw it across the room, and his daughter said, no, Dad, you got to watch it. He said, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever read. And then his daughters tried talking him into it. His agent said, Peter, read it again. This thing they're saying this has got a chance of being a hit. You got to read it again. So he finally read it and he said, yeah, well, he started coming around. And then he got into it. Lloyd, the first person that they ever cast was Bob Stack. They thought of him because shoot, his character's name. Anyway, they thought of him because of that Elliot Ness kind of delivery that he has. And they thought that is exactly what we want. And so we want Bob Stack. So he got it. Lloyd, I remember there was a day when Lloyd and Bob Stack and Julie and I were in a rehearsal hall over at Paramount. One of those rehearsal rooms where there are windows on two sides and hardwood floor and a dance bar, with the mirrors all along. So you could have dance rehearsals or whatever. It's a little rehearsal space. And they had tape on the floor so that you had tape for us for the cockpit and tape for them for being in the control tower. And we were doing the rehearsal and Lloyd was just kind of I don't know, something was bothering him, it's just like, and he says, well, what are we doing? He's like, what? And Bob Stack, beautiful Bob. And he just said, well, come on, Lloyd, they just want us to be us. Lloyd went, and then he kind of thought about it. And the next thing you know, he really got into it. And then he was great. But he just had that thing. And then, that's the kind of thing actors go through that. You'll have these moments where you're thinking, oh, how do I do this scene? What do I do? And then finally you come up with it, or they give you a little clue and then you go, and then it feels good, So,
well, I can totally see why it would be a tough transition for some people to get behind it, because it was a brand new style of comedy, and so it's like, wow, but that's fantastic. So what was Julie Hagerty like to work with?
Unbelievable. She and Donna were probably the two most enjoyable folks. Well, I mean, there's some guys that I also worked with, Johnny Banks and Peter Weller, and I mean, there were other people too, but Julie was she is the character you see on screen that's kind of her.
Yeah.
And there's one scene I use to describe when people say, what's Julie Hagerty like? There was a scene behind the cockpit in that space right up in there. And we start out the scene, and this was when, I was doing Angie. And what happened like on Angie is that we'd have a guest star come on, or someone in maybe a supporting role would come on. They'd be really nervous. And you got a live audience, you got all the cameras, the crew, and all the cast, everyone's standing around and get kind of nervous, and they blow a line, and I'd see them just, like, and and I'd be doing the scene with them, and then they'd say action, and I would blow the line. And I'd look at them and say, "Look what you did to me!" And they go, "What?" And they'd realize that I was joking with them, and they would laugh, and it would make them all comfortable. And so then we'd do the scene, and we started this scene, and she blew the line, and she said, "I'm sorry." And I said, "No, Julie," because they said cut. He said, "I'm sorry." No, Julie, it's okay. We got the script. Yeah, can you show her the line? She says, "I'm sorry." With that little voice of hers, that's her little voice. And he says, "Okay, here, yeah, don't worry about it, Julie. You got the line?" She said, yeah, I'm sorry." I said, No, don't worry. Okay, so ready and action. And I was thinking, oh God, because you just want to just hold her and protect her from anything else. She's just one of those little things. You love her so much. And so we started the scene, and I blew the line, and they said cut, and she said, "I'm sorry." He said, "No, Julie, it wasn't you, it was Bob." And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry." The sweetest thing on the planet. God, she is so wonderful. And I think that if you think of any of the other people that were ever even slightly considered, most people weren't even considered, I don't think, but anyone that, if they were thinking, well, if we can't find it, we got to use somebody, what about this one or that one or this? Nobody could have done it the way Julie did it, I don't think. I think she was so brilliant in that it was just wonderful.
Well, the film came out and was like a huge hit. I think it was like the fourth biggest hit of that year. So when immediately there's talk of the sequel. So a couple of years later, you did Airplane 2. Then now you did that without the Zaz team. Like, did you feel a difference on that?
Oh yeah, Ken Finkelman did it. The boys didn't want to have anything to do with it. They'd done it. They didn't want to just rehash the same jokes again and do it again. And so they didn't want to have anything to do with it. But of course, they were the creators, so I guess they had their participation in it. But they found this guy, he's a Canadian boy, Ken Finkelman, and they wanted to continue with the screenwriter as director. They wanted to keep that kind of thing going. And and so Ken was kind of, I don't know how much he'd done exactly before, but maybe Hollywood was kind of, he was getting his feet wet on that level. And he asked me if I would come in and work with him. So I go into his office, his little cubicle over there at Paramount, and we would, work over things in the script and dialogue and whatever. And and one day I was waiting for him, and he came in just looking like he'd been through it. And he takes his briefcase and he sets it down on the desk, and he leans across and looks at me and he says, "I finally figured out what it's like making a film in Hollywood." I said, "What?" And he said, "Making the deal is like having sex with the girl. Making the film is like trying to get her out of your apartment." And I thought, I burst out laughing because it was so funny, and it also seemed so true to me, just with, a little bit that I'd been around it. But his sense of comedy, I thought, was really good. But there were tiny little things in there that it's just, the boys were the best. They were the best. And I mean the best in the business. To me, they were just the best. So all the other people, they're really, good. They're really good, pretty good, whatever. And it's like, yeah, well, that's good. That was really good. I like that film. That was really good. But none of them could compare to their sense of timing, the pacing, the editing, everything that they did on it. But so I could see a bit of a difference. He wanted to rewrite one of the scenes when we were sitting there, and I was boring little old lady to death. I think it was when back up. And I said, well, I could go on forever, but I don't want to bore you to death. And she's a skeleton.
Yes.
Uh, I thought the timing on that, the slightest bit off. I've always thought that they should have had the camera pull back and reveal this skeleton. When I look at her and see it is when the camera should see it too. And it pulled back and revealed it first, and then I turned and looked. And to me, I always thought I'd like to see it if I see it just right when the camera sees her. So that was just an example of it. But he wanted to redo that scene, just that speech. So he had a legal, the long yellow legal pads, and he wrote up a new speech. And he said, "What do you think of this?" And we looked at it, and I read it, and I said, "Yeah, that's funny." And he said, "Okay, let's shoot it." And the crew, director of photography, and everybody, they looked at him, and I looked at him, and they said, "Aren't you going to give him a chance to learn it?" And he says, "No, I got faith in him." And they were saying, "What? And I told the guys, everybody, I said, no, it's good. Let's just go ahead, let's shoot it." And so they said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, come on, let's just go ahead and shoot it." And I got back like this, and I put it up in front of my face like that. and they were kind of laughing, and he was like, "All right, it take 10 minutes. Is 10 minutes enough?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And so I had to learn this whole new, long speech, and then we shot that. But which I thought was very funny. It was like, it would drive you nuts. And if you weren't having a good time, that would be one more of those stories of why you hated working on that show and why you hated working with those people and la la la. But we had so much fun that was just one more funny thing to me that happened. That was the thing about Airplane. I could not wait to get to work every single day. I just couldn't wait to get there.
There was talk of a 3. I mean, was that ever discussed with you?
Yeah, absolutely. We were in negotiations for it, and it was my fault. Because I fell for the paparazzi. Everywhere I'd go to an event, a red carpet deal, or whatever, and the paparazzi there, and they always had people say, "Hey, Robert, Airplane Hayes. Hey, you think you'll ever do anything besides Airplane? You think you'll ever be a real actor?" And, being a young guy and a young, impressionable guy, whatever, I just really, I'd take that to heart. And nowadays it's called a franchise. Back then, it was just called, they were looked down upon.
Yeah.
So I was in England. I was doing a film with a friend of mine at the time, Rob Cohen, and they wanted to, and this, you got to remember, this is back, it's not nowadays, 20 million, $30 million, 150 trillion, whatever they get for movies now, the actors. But you do a film like Airplane, it explodes like Airplane and breaks every record everywhere. They want that luck. They want you to be in their film, so that film will make a lot. And so your very next film, I got $25,000 for doing Airplane. That was my salary, and which to me is like, hey, that's great. Look what it did for me. My very next film, if it was nowadays, you'd probably get $10-11 million.
Yeah.
And and after that, if that works at all, then you're getting $20 million a picture. Well, back then, the benchmark was $1 million for a film. That was the big numbers, the 20 million of its day.
Mm-hmm.
And they got it up to 10 points, but they were probably the producer's net, which means nothing. It made $100 billion. Yes, and here's your cut. You get a cup of coffee. It's like something like that.
Yeah.
But they got it 10 points and a 1.5 million that they got it up to. So that was like the big money. Mm-hmm. And I kept saying, no, I want to be an actor. I want to be an actor. And I'm just, every time I tell that story, I have to have whoever I'm telling it to kick me right in the ass. So both of you, next time I see you in person, if I ever do, you got to just walk up and kick me in the ass.
Okay.
So,
Well, showbiz, man, those things happen. But
yeah,
did they
yeah.
ever say what the plot would have been about had it gone forward?
I had the script. I had the script.
Hmm.
I had all my scripts, all that 4.5 years ago, whatever that was now. Last November, it was 4 years. That was the big fires in LA, in Woolsey Canyon, Malibu fires. You remember those?
Hmm.
2,500 homes, and up in Paradise, it was 14,000 homes old, and mine was one of them. So I lost all of everything. I lost my scripts, all
Oh.
the pictures I had. I got out with a shirt in my back. That was it. And this laptop I'm talking to you guys on right now. But they had it. I read it, and I guess if I ever really wanted to just sit there and beat myself with a little whip or something, instead I would just read the Airplane 3 script and say, why didn't I do it? I can do that instead. You want a lava enema, or do you want to read the script that you didn't do? I'll take the lava enema, please. I can't read that script. It'll hurt.
Wow.
But it was written, good people, and but I just had really fallen for. I used to really be stubborn. I am now. I'm just stubborn, but I used to really be stubborn.
Well, we do want to ask quickly about a couple of really big popular cult things that you did. One of them being the horror anthology Cat's Eye, created by Stephen King. It had a lot of fans. Your segment was so much fun, and I thought a big departure from what I had previously seen you in. What are some of your memories of that? And did you meet King then during that filming?
He came. There were 3 segments in that, and it was down in what was it, Charleston? No, it was in North or South Carolina. Was it Charleston? I can't remember. Anyway, that's where Dino De Laurentiis had his studios that he built down there, and Stephen King came down there to visit on the set, and it was a week that I was gone, and I came back and they said, yeah, Stephen King was here. Oh, cool. And everyone got to meet him, and they were all like, oh, that was so cool. And I said, oh, man. And they said, yeah, but he said to tell you that he had seen this stuff and he really likes your work. And I said, oh, okay. That's something. That's good. I'm happy about that. But that was a Kenny McMillan, who played the mob guy that is forcing me to go around the thing. Kenny was such a brilliant actor, a wonderful actor, and we really got along really, really great on that. I mean, except that he tortured me, but other than that, we really got along great. And the set, it was really fun. The director was really good. It was really a lot of fun. They brought in a Spanish set production designer, I guess it was, and there were some points where I was probably 5 or 6 feet above the floor of the in the studio, in the soundstage, and yet the buildings, and I'm going along the wall, and they've got that flats here for the wall, and then right across the street are all the skyscrapers, and they were built in perspective, so they were only about this far apart at the base of it. It was only that wide, and yet you get up to the top of the building and it's 6 feet wide, so you're seeing this thing in perspective. It was brilliant. I mean, being in it was like being in this really cool Disneyland kind of a thing, and they had little tiny toy cars about this big with little lights in them, and they'd pull them along so you'd see traffic down below. I mean, it was really something. And you always have to be careful of makeup and wardrobe and everything. But I was just being battered. We had the Ritter fans going, 50-mile-an-hour winds or 70 sometimes. and almost blowing you off the edge. That's the point of it, you know, that the winds were almost blowing you off the ledge. And then they'd have rain, you know, hoses and everything, so they have a little bit of rain hitting you. And I mean, go fix your makeup, fix your hair. Okay, get out there. So they never had to go through all of that stuff. So I would take a break. They'd say, okay, we got a break. And I'd walk over to the edge of the soundstage, and this is down South Carolina. So that they'd open up the big old doors about this wide, and I could just step outside and take a deep breath, because it gets so stuffy in those sound stages. So I take a nice deep breath, and it's rainy, and I'm just getting pummeled by the rain, and it feels so good. And I walk back in, and I'm all ready. I'm all set to go. Just blown to bits and full of rain. Yep, same thing out there. So that was a remarkable thing. My stunt double, wonderful guy, and he, when I made it all the way around and I had to fall back in over the railing into the little patio, I used to have him before every scene. I would just stand there and I'd have him hit me in the shoulders, like you see football players do, you know, they just pound you, get ready for pounding. And that would get me all kind of rattled and shaken. And I was saying, yeah, really give me come on, really shake me up here. And he did. And someone called from, like, you know, we're ready on stage or something. And I moved a little bit to say, okay, be there a second. And he kind of moved a little. And so when he hit, one of his hands, and he really hit hard, was right on the sternum, and which sort of cracked a rib, just slight little thing.
Gosh.
And I thought, oh, wow, that feels. And suddenly it's kind of a little hard to breathe. And I said, okay, yeah, no, that's good. You want some more? No, that's good. So then I go tumbling in, and then I'm doing this thing. Okay, did the tumble. Let's do it again. So then later that day, as we're going along, it's like, oof, wow, that really feels weird. And he said, would you want to go to the doctor? And I said, no, we'll just keep working. And so at lunchtime, Dino came down to the set and he said, do you want to go to the doctor? I said, I never held up filming. I don't want to. He says, don't be silly. So I went to the doctor and they looked and x-rayed it, and they said there was just the slightest little hairline thing. That's not much. It just hurts, but it's not anything you got to worry about. And, you know, it's not like broken, going to puncture your lung, or it's none of that kind of stuff. It's just a little crack. So it came back after lunch, and the very next scene was when I was up that curved part of the roof where I'm going between, you know, the windows, and he's talking, you know, with, I think he's got the hose or something out of one window, and then the big guy, Mike Starr, the big guy that's his flunky, leaned out the other one and blew the little trumpet at me. And that's when I go, oh, and I slide down. And I slide down, you think, okay, let's wait for the body to splash 40 stories down. But instead, I'm caught on that thing, and I say, you bastard. So he knows that I'm still alive, and I'm still going to have to go around the thing. Well, when I came back from lunch, that's the scene we were shooting. So I had to lay down on the ledge that caught me, and it went right through where the rib was. It was cracked. And it was painful. So they say, when people tell me, they said, God, man, you really seem so intense in that scene. I said, yeah, I was. It was a rib. It hurt. And
Jeez.
so that lasted for days and days. So that, you know, then the next day is when it really starts hurting. And when you sit back on a couch to rest, and then you lean forward, muscles tighten up, and that's when you realize, oh my God, you got to turn sideways, roll over, and then you got to get up. So we get to that big W that was and you got to cross that. And I told my stunt double, and I'll think of it in his name in a minute, but I said, when you go across, they're going to let it loose. So the bottom is hinged and the letter falls out like that. And you got to hang on. If you let go with either hand, let go with your left hand, because I can't use my left hand. And so he said, okay. So he, goes out and he's hanging by one hand like that. So then instead of it, being down like this, instead of then me getting out there, and then you lift it up a little bit, and then they lifted it like halfway back up. And oh God. So that whole thing was very, very painful. And I tried to use it. But I thought it was really pretty fun,
Such
film.
an
It turned out
underrated movie. It was such a fun movie. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's talk about Starman. It only lasted one season, but it still has a lot of fans. How did you come into that show, and what are some of your memories from that?
That and Airplane are my two favorite things that I've ever done. And I've got other things. I mean, Angie was, that first season, especially of Angie, and all these other things, but that I was lucky enough to do. But those two are just special. And I had a film and television development deal at Columbia TriStar, and we didn't come up with a film, so I did that part of the deal, and we were trying to find something, and we just never could find anything that sounded good to either one of us, and we both had to agree, the studio and me both had to agree to it. And then so it was down to, we were looking for a series, and every time they'd come up with something and I'd say, well, what is it? And they would kind of read the whole synopsis of it, and I say, that doesn't sound very good. And that doesn't sound so good. And finally, it was literally the last day. And at the end of this day, it was done. And then I'd get paid off, and it was just a development deal that nothing ever worked out. And they called me up, and he said, hey, Bob, I got one for you. And I said, what is it? And he said, no, I'm going to let you come in. Let them tell you. And because if he had told me, I probably would have gone, oh no, I don't want to be Jeff Bridges. I don't want to do something the other side. Somebody else already did it, and they did it so well. And so anyway, I went in, and it was Mike Gray and John and Mike that developed this, and Michael Douglas was still exec producer of this too, like he was of the film. Mm-hmm. And so they started telling me about it, and the way they told me, and my whole thing was, I don't want to do this. I don't want to copy somebody else. I have to follow in their shoes. I want to have something myself, that I create myself. But the way they told me, it just sounded so interesting. It was 13 years later, and it's a whole different thing. So we finally said, well, okay, let's give it a try. And we shot a small little presentation, which I think they used part of when we finally did the 2-hour opening pilot. But it was so, the two times I felt that much of a family. We all just loved being there together, and we all felt like we were all equally responsible for doing this project. And that was Airplane and well, especially Starman. And I was in a position on that I was like, I was a profit participant. It means I didn't get residuals, but if it sold, I got the money that it sells in syndication. And so I was like one of the owners, kind of, in a way, not really an owner, but what they call a proper participant. and it was stuff that I never realized so much until later, but I set the tone on the sets, and I was able to do that. And I just was just being me, and I like having a good working atmosphere, and so I was just being, just me, and just acting the way I would be normally, as obnoxious as that might be sometimes. And that seemed to kind of trickle down on the set. Everyone, I afterwards, I'd help the crew wrap cables and come on, let's hurry up so we can get back over to my motorhome. He got me a motorhome on the set. And he said, what do you want in it? I said, I want you to go out and get one beer of every kind of beer you can find. And I get the crew in after we wrapped, and we'd sit all around in there, and I'd set out a beer in front of everybody, and I'd say, okay, one swig, and you pass it to your left. Let's test these and see which one do you like the best? Which one do you like the best? And that's what I want to get in here. We can have that in here when we find the ones we like. I mean, it was just so much fun. And it was, when people would say, what's it like? I said, it's kind of like The Fugitive crossed with Highway to Heaven. And that's, you're on the run, but you can do these things. And it was magical. It was so magical. And it made you feel good. Doing that role just made you feel good, because the guy was an alien. He wasn't a human, but he had more humanity than anybody that he would encounter. And I figured my character was like, I would hold a mirror up to people. If they'd come up to me, if we get into a conversation and get whatever our exchange was, it just started showing them what they were, and it was just magical. I thought it was just magical. I loved that show. And I look at it nowadays, and it's 30 something, 34 years old or something like that. And I still find it so fun to watch. It's just enjoyable. My son loves to watch it. He's 32 years old.
Well, it still has a huge cult following, that show. I mean, to this day, it's still very popular. But I read that you weren't sure you were going to come back for a second season, if there was.
Oh, for Starman?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was looking forward to it. Yeah. I wanted to direct, and they said, yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah, we'll get to it. And they said, okay, look, yeah. So next season, when we start, then we'll start you directing. And that's when I finally put my foot down and said no, and got my agent to go in there and we just said no. And so I directed that, I guess it was the next to the last one or the next to the last one. And they wound up being so happy with it. It was like, oh shoot, we should have used you some more, because they were having the crew, giving me a tough time, but in a real loving way. They were having pools. They were setting up pools and picking times. It was an 8-day shooting schedule. And if we were in town, we'd film Fridays and have Saturday and Sunday off. If we were outside the 70-mile limit in LA, then you can go 6 days. So Friday night, you've got to wrap at 10, because you got to give them 2 hours to wrap. And they've got to stop at midnight. And so how they say, okay, how many, do you think he's going to have to go to 10? Will he make it before 10? Probably not. So how far over do you think he's going to go? Will we get it all done on Monday? We'll have to cut into the next show, but we got to finish this one. So will he get it all done on Monday? Will it go into Tuesday? How far over is he going to go? And I remember I turned to my AD and I said, what time is it? And he said, it's 7:15. And I said, 7:15, huh? And I turned to the crew and I said, that's a wrap. And they went, what? And then everyone started paying everybody off. And I said, hey, wait a minute, where's the money? But came in ahead of schedule, under budget, and it dealt with illiteracy, and we got an award for
Oh,
Literacy
Oh.
Foundation, and it was really neat, really
Mm.
neat. Loved it.
Well, you were the very first guest on Gary Shandling's absolutely brilliant Larry Sanders Show. Were you friends with Shandling, and did you get what they were going for on that right away?
My manager, Fran Saperstein, used to be with Bernie Brillstein's management company, and Brad Gray was a young guy at the time that was in Brillstein's, had just come into Brillstein's, and he was either handling Gary or had just been assigned to him or brought him in. I don't remember what it was, but one day I came in the offices and Brad and Gary attacked me and said, "Hey, Robert, got this great idea. We're going to do this talk show." And I was like, "What? We're going to do a talk show, and it's just going to be me, but it's going to be kind of like we're spoofing me. And yeah, I want you to be on and you could be a guest, and you make fun of my hair, and you could." And I said, "What? What are you talking about?" And I said, finally, I said, "Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to act being me. So I would be me, but I'd be acting being me. This is interesting. I've never had this happen before." And so anyway, and that's how that came about. But it was fun. And Rip Torn, was his producer on the show.
Mhm.
And Rip had been in Airplane 2. Yeah. And with some of the funniest scenes in the whole thing that were cut, unfortunately. But I don't know if they were on the gag reel. But anyway, that was great fun. And it was great seeing Rip again and Gary. I had fun on the show, but I kind of didn't know what I was doing.
it was great.
Well, that would always be awkward. Like, like you need to act, you need to be yourself, but like really, no, seriously, be yourself, because that's what we're going for. But man, that's what a great show though, man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, Airplane is now over 40 years old, still regarded as one of the funniest of all time. So how proud of you to have to be involved with that?
Oh, more than I can explain to you. I mean, it was like winning one of the big lottos in terms of just of the things that you love that you've done. You know what I mean? It was my first feature film. It was a huge hit everywhere, all over the world. And I go to other countries and people would recognize me, and on the airlines, of course. And it showed me how wonderful the work experience in Hollywood could be if you were just trying to imagine what would be just the ideal, perfect, incredibly fun experience. And you make a film that not only is it the most fun you've ever had, but it's so successful. It's in the Library of Congress. It's in, I mean, it's like, my God. And it's like, oh, well, got this thing called Airplane. You want to do it? Okay. Well, I got to do it. It was just the best.
Wow.
Still have friends from it, and still friends with David and Jerry and Jim, and I just love those guys, and Julie, and then I've seen Lorna occasionally, and she's great. And so Kareem, see, just a little more rarely, but I see him, and it was great. And,
well, you did the commercials with him, which was great.
Yeah. He's fun. I think Airplane probably relaxed him a little bit, because I think he and I talked a little bit. He grew up very shy, very awkward, very self-conscious about his height. And people would come up and say, "Hey, how's the weather up there?" It just made him cringe. He just hated that so much. And And I think that when he found his calling, you know, basketball, he was able to take out any of the pain from growing up and feeling kind of awkward and whatever. He took it out on the court. And I still think he's the all-time scorer, by the way. Sorry, LeBron. They didn't even have, I think he made one three-pointer. Kareem made one three-pointer because the three-pointer didn't exist for 99% of his career. So let's take away, how many three-pointers did you make, LeBron? Okay, subtract that many points from your total. And now where are you? I'm defending my guy. I'm defending Kareem. Yeah.
Well, how often do you go back and watch Airplane, and what are your thoughts when you do?
Well, I whenever, if I see it, if I'm just scrolling through the channels and it's on, I'll click over and I'll watch. And it's funny, you know, Airplane is one of those films that every time you watch it, you can see something that you missed before. And here I've seen it, God knows how many times. And in over 43 years, it's 43 years ago this July is when it came out. So we made it in the preceding year, so 44 years ago. But just as an example, I watched it 3 times. I'd seen it 3 times at screenings, at Directors Guild, at, you know, all these things before it was released. It was getting such a huge word of mouth around town. And a writer, friend of mine, said, yeah, the scene where he says, where's the truck? It's over there. And the plane crashes through the plate glass window. And he tells me about a thing, and I said, really? I never noticed it. Well, it crashes through the plate glass window, and everyone runs, and there's a stunt woman. They're all stunt people. And there's a stunt woman that's got a toy doll, obviously, wrapped in a pink blanket. And she goes, throws the baby up in the air and runs. And I had never seen that. And so the fourth time I see it and I go, my God, now I can't miss it because it just sticks out. But you just see things that you never saw before because you're just focusing on one thing, and then you see these things going off in the background. You know, and the cable puller on the camera cable, he was not pulling it fast enough, and you see the cable going through in the airport in the beginning when I'm, you know, Elaine, and I'm following her, and here's the cable laying in the back. You see him sneaking through at one point, but that was a low budget film. We couldn't stop. Let's reset everything. Okay, we had to shoot it, get it, move on. And we were way down the hall. The camera was way down there, and I'm standing way back here at my starting point. Nobody else is around me because we didn't want to draw attention and try to keep all the people as normal as possible, not staring at cameras and, you know. And a guy walks up next to me, and he's standing next to me, and he's looking down the camera, and he kind of says, "What are they doing down there?" And I said, "Oh, they're making a movie or something." He said, "Who's in it?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, like Robert Redford, Paul Newman, or something. He said, "Really?" And he was off running down there trying to see. And then we shoot the scene, and it's me, and I come walking down, and as I get down to the camera, and then I go right off, you know, camera, and there he is standing down there trying to see all these people, and he's looking at me, and I'm kind of, and he sees me, and he just goes, "What?" And I just thought, oh, sorry, I know it's not Newman or Redford. I'm sorry.
How often do fans reach out to you now?
Well, it's funny, in Hawaii, we've been over here just 2 years. Yeah.
Oh.
And, but people over here, they'll say, oh, you're Ted Stryker in that film Airplane. And I say, yeah. And they go, yeah. And then they go off to buy something. And that's it. Or if someone tells them, hey, you know who that guy is? And he said, wow, oh, that guy, brother. He said guy's on Airplane. What? He said, yeah, he was Ted Stryker on Airplane. Where? Right over there. And I kind of look over and see him, and they go, huh. And they turn around. That's kind of, I mean, occasionally, you know, they get a little more excited about it. Or Homeward Bound. They love Homeward Bound over here. But they don't respond like they do back, you know. I just was back there in LA a couple of weeks ago. They had we had the 30th anniversary screening of Homeward Bound at the El Capitan, where 30 years ago, had the family there, in-laws, everybody, godparents, Kit and Cynthia McCord and Donna Pescow and her husband Arnold.
Wow.
And their son, I mean, we were all there. And Jake, my little guy Jake, was 2, just about a week or so shy of being 2. And we all watched it. And now here we are 30 years later in that beautiful theater and having a screening, and it was almost sold out. 900-seat theater, I think it was 800 people.
That's
Or 800 plus. Anyway, it was really a great evening. It was great. So I was back for that, and people would say, "Oh, hey, Robert. Hey, how are you? Hey," and I thought, "Gosh, yeah, I haven't heard that for a while," because I'm in the land of, "Oh, yeah."
Well, how much do you love living there? Because, you know, when you hear the sentence, I live in Hawaii now, that's like invokes nothing but seething envy, especially in me. Are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I always used to dream about it. You know, I tell my son, Jakey, who's in, he is a young budding actor and has gotten some work so far, and takes a little bit more after his mom in the music side of it. His mom, Cherie Curry, was the lead singer of the Runaways, and his uncle, Steve Lukather, is lead guitarist with Toto, and so he's got all of that, you know. And then on my side, it's just me. My dad was, you know, Marine colonel, fighter pilot, so no, it wasn't in the business. So I used to tell him, when you make it, like, if you know you're going to get your record deal and you're going to get a million selling album and you're going to start to have a tour and you're going to get millions. He says, yeah, Dad, I want to get you that spot. I always talked about having a little bungalow right on a nice, beautiful point break where you got a beautiful right hand, not rights and lefts, you know, but a beautiful little surf spot. So you got a great point break, and that's paradise. So I've always wanted that. And that's his, you know, he would always say, Dad, I want to get you that bungalow. Dad, I want to, that's my whole goal is I want to get you that bungalow. And I thought, okay, this is fun. I got the kid thinking in the right direction. So then we get the fire, you get wiped out. You suddenly lose everything that you own, all the things you've gathered up. And thank God I have 5 loads of laundry on the back porch. Now, I don't have to do those ever again. So that's a good one. But you do get to where, and it takes a while because there's a lot of sadness. You know, I mean, I had all my original notes, Airplane 2, Homeward Bound, and Angie scripts, and all these scripts, you know, I had just about every show I'd ever done. So those are all gone. But what are you going to do with them after you die? What, you know, you won't care if you have them anymore. you know. So it's okay. At some point, you're going to turn to ashes. Well, all of my stuff already did. So it beat me to it. but I thought we were trying to find a place. My girlfriend Gina and I were I moved in with her when I lost the house. Then they were going to sell that house. She'd sold hers and was renting a place, and so they were going to sell that. So we just started looking for places to stay. We wound up with the cutest place, and then it wound up having black mold, and we got sick. So then we're moving from place to place, trying to figure what are we going to do. They said, we could do this. We both agreed, we could do this in Hawaii. Yeah. Well, let's just do it for a little bit until, So we bought a one-way ticket. She said, at one point, she said, so as we're getting ready to leave, we're down in Venice renting little Airbnbs. She said, what do you think would be like a return date? Because she kind of is in corporate. She's used to schedules and, and I said, honey, there's a reason that you call it a one-way ticket. It's you don't know when you're coming back. And she said, oh, yeah. So now started on Oahu for a couple of weeks to, she has 2 little dogs and we had to get that all settled and everything. Then we went to Kauai for 2.5 months, and we went to Maui for 3 months, and we went to the Big Island for 2 months. Mm-hmm. And then we came back, and now she has some in-laws that live on Oahu, and so her sister's ex, and he was born and raised here, and so they got the family that she wants to be close to, nephews and stuff. So we thought, okay, Oahu, nah. I mean, that's Waikiki, Honolulu. You want to be in some really, you don't want to be in Miami South Beach or Beverly Hills. You want to, but you find out that, my God, you can get out in the country like we are, and if you want, you can drive into town, 45 minutes or an hour, depending on what traffic is, or if the tourists are particularly heavy, 3 hours. No, not really. But it's just great. It's just great. So yeah, go ahead and move over here.
So what are you going to be appearing in next that we can look forward to?
People say, so are you still working? Are you still? And my line is one that I heard decades ago. Actors never retire. They're just between films. So you might be a week between films, or you might be 10 years between, or 20 years between films. But I've had scripts they've sent to me, and nothing has really been interesting, except one was, and I liked it. There were a couple of guys in Washington, D.C. doing a thing about pinballs. It was really kind of the guy who saved the pinballs. And it was really neat. I liked the script. I liked those guys. And so we were all set to do it. But then the kid in it changed. I don't know what was the reason, but they had to redo the whole show. And they had to go with a different, much more, it was a more ethnic-y looking, I'm pure WASP. So whatever ethnic-y stuff is me is in there, but it's so buried that unless you're looking at my left hip bone, you could see some of it there, but not, I mean, it's so I'm just I'm waiting to see if Steven Spielberg, I think he did a really nice job with the Fabelmans. And yes. So if he decides he wants to do the Fabelmans, the Wasp story, maybe I could do that one, maybe. But
I'm sure he's a big viewer of this, so when he watches this,
I met him. I liked him a lot. I really enjoyed talking with him. It was just a short little bit, but yeah, he's ridiculously good. But yeah, I'm just I'm waiting. I've been painting. I've been taking out my artist energies. They have to be directed somewhere. So I just started trying to teach myself how to paint. I've been painting, waterfalls and waves and clouds and scenes, scenes of Hawaii. Yeah. So,
well, we want to thank you so much for joining us. I mean, anytime you want to come back, we were so looking forward to this. We're both huge fans, and it was such a pleasure getting to speak to you. And you were so gracious with your time as well. So anytime
I appreciate it.
No,
you guys are wonderful. You guys are great. You guys are really wonderful. I was trying to I woke up about 5 and I thought, okay, let me get up and start getting ready. I thought, oh, well, not just yet. So I'm, and then I'm up and I'm trying to get everything ready. So I made a double strong green tea with matcha powder and coconut milk. And so I'm blaming it all on that. Why I ramble on and talk so much.
Not at all. Not at all.
No, seriously. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. You guys are great. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. And yeah, it'd be fun to do it again. Sometime we'll do it. Absolutely. I'll do it when I get my next film, or maybe have a showing of all of my work.
We even talked about Homeward Bound. So yes, that's another.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm saying that my next film or my first showing. So basically, I guess this is it. We won't ever be talking again.
No, anytime. I'll let Fran know the same. But this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Ike Eisenmann. And again, a very special thanks to Robert Hayes. And please subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.